Hello there. I remain yours truly, Maxwell Okure. I discuss life issues here. So I actually want to bring in something very important to us. Um, whatever profession that you find yourself, see it as a calling, see it as something that you have to do. Don't have the impression that there's something better out there. Though can have projections to your career, but what you're doing immediately at the immediate position seems to be very important than what you're in expectation of. So you just need to project yourself towards, okay, I'm expecting to get a bigger job, a bigger paid job than this, but this is what you're doing. So put yourself into it. So I'll narrow it down to the teaching profession. Listen carefully for a teacher. Teaching profession can never make you rich, can't get you wealthy. Any teacher that tells you that he went into the teaching profession, spent 1 year, 2 years there, and he became extremely, or she became extremely rich, question that process. I mean it. Question that process. The system of teaching was not designed to create wealth. It was like created as a teaching field, as a ground for self development. So if you're going in there, I mean, the teaching field, in order for you to get huge wealth, you're wasting time. So you better actually go look for another job or probably go pick up a gun, which would not be an option anyways at this stage. But this is what I'm trying to hammer at here. The teaching profession was not meant to make anybody rich. It was created or designed to improve capacities, to improve enablement towards increasing what you can do based on what you have. So if really you want to take teaching as a profession, you must start thinking as a businessman, not as an employee. No proprietress or proprietor would want to make you rich. They'll pay your salaries, and if possible, they pay you when what you should be. I think you, in fact, you're above the thoughts of it. So they give you the salary when you actually have a whole lot of debt. So by the time you're taking your salary, it's of no use. So have this at the back of your mind. If teaching profession is your calling, that means you've already made up your mind. Like some of us, even though we disagreed when we started that we can go to the field, it's a field that you know it's a calling for you. From this moment you finish listening to this video, start seeing that field as a business. Don't see yourself as a bloody goddamn teacher that has to resume 7:45 every day and close by 4 p.m. after lessons. If you follow that pattern, you will just burn out. It gets to a point you hate the job, you hate yourself, and you hate your destiny. But if the calling is something that you really want to make something out of it, so listen carefully. One, start thinking as a businessman. What can I put in into this field so I can multiply my effects? Kind of a domino effect on your abilities. Let me give you a scenario. When I started off teaching, I was paid, I had a challenge with tutorial business. I was paid around 400 naira per hour. So I teach for 1 hour, I get 400 naira. Peanut, isn't it? That's how you get started with, at least to show some level of seriousness, according to those that own the business, anyways. So I went on days for a section and I realized that as I'm making this money, I'm also spending it. I don't have savings. So how do I make life out of this? How do I make sense? No, you have those big projections, ambitions. How do you get those achievements out with this little pay you're getting? So I thought of business. Okay. So what I did was I decided to create materials of what I teach. So the first thing I did was to create an oral textbook, oral English textbook. Yeah. Now this is it. It wasn't easy getting the money to make the publication, but I had to do it one way or the other, borrow from friends and as the case might be. So I made my publication. I did my first 1,000 copies. Now I sold a copy of that book for 150 naira. As at then, it was not a big book. As at then, Now, 150 naira per copy of that small book, that oral English book I did. In a class where I'll teach and get 400 naira, I was selling close to 100 copies to my students. So as I was teaching, I was selling the books because I made it mandatory in a way that everything I was talking about in the classroom was already in the book. So it's as if I was reading from an handout. So it was compulsory for students to get them because there are assignments and practicals you actually have to do in the book there. So that made students, buy the book. Now, in my first taking class, my first ever appearance in class with the book, I sold close to 120 copies of that book. Now, imagine how much I made with 120 copies compared to the 400 naira I was getting per hour. That's where the business sense comes in. No school, listen carefully, no school will employ you, give you a classroom to sit in if there's no staff room, and expect you to make fortune out of the school. So it's left for you to think carefully. How many years do I want to sit in this profession as an employee? Then how many years do I want to sit in as an investor? Investor simply means you bring in the business angle into it. There is no teaching profession today, whether it's at the primary section, at the secondary section, at the university or tertiary section, that teachers, lecturers, do not have investments in those angles or sectors. So for you to increase your revenue, you have to think like a businessman. What can I invest into this business? So you can be in a teaching field for 20 years and you still don't get something out of it. It's very possible. And you retire and they call you a retired teacher. Then you start telling your stories of how you taught 1,500 students and how they become doctors and lawyers and blah, blah, blah. And you are just there. If you are okay with such a story, fine, go ahead. You can do your teaching. And when you're done with lesson notes, then you can find a cushion, sit, relax, and probably sup with your experiences. But if you want to take a step further away from what these systems are, you have to do more. Invest in that your business, which is a teaching profession. You can't be teaching a subject as economics, for instance, biology, for instance, and you've been in that field for 10 years. You've been teaching that subject for 15 years and you don't have one material, not just one textbook for you to project with. Should, in case you're not in class, this book should be selling so you make money. That's passive income. Get marketers to help you spread it across. You cannot just sit down and be writing lesson notes. Now, let me give you a position to how I was thinking then. Every Monday morning, you write lesson notes for the week. You also write your lesson plan, okay? Now, in my head, I was thinking, the energy I put in writing my lesson notes, if I put the same energy in writing books, at the end of the week, I probably have written like 5, 6, 7 pages. In a month, I've probably written a chapter. In 5 months, I've written like 5 chapters. And before you know it, I've written a book in a term. So, if 3 terms makes a section, that means if I put in more energy for the 3 terms, that's 9 months, I could likely have written 2 books. Now, these books are investments. Even when I'm not there, the next generation can pick it up and still make money from it. So you have to think carefully on how you can project on this and try as much as possible to make your calling your business. That way you can project into that level of wealth and that realm of achievement you're looking out for. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.